Welcome back. This is your teacher, David Garcia, and today we're going to be working on the slope. So before we begin, let's remember very quickly what we know about the slope. In our previous video, we saw that the slope is the relationship between the rise and the run in a straight line. Okay, so in other words, we know that the slope will be the change on the vertical divided by the change on the horizontal. And this presents us with four different types of scenarios or possibilities, and that is for all straight lines. You see in this first example, we have a straight line that, according to the previous video, is going downwards. So we already know that arithmetically, the slope for this, the inclination for this line will be negative. And we have the other case down here. The slope for this line, if you see, we have in this line here, we have a positive slope, okay? The inclination is going upwards from left to right, so we know that it is positive. The two other cases that we didn't see, that they're new, so to speak, are these ones here. So let's begin with this. If you see this line is completely horizontal, so there is no change in y. There is no change in height. It doesn't matter what 2 points we take on that line. We could take this point in here and this point in here. There will be no change in their height. So the differential on the altitude will be 0. So if we try to calculate this way, using our formula, I'm going to move this, we will have that the change on y, the change on the vertical position, right, will be 0. And the change in x, it doesn't really matter, right? It can be any number. Okay. In this case, let's do the calculation. Let's do the counting. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. The change in x will be 5. It doesn't matter because 0 divided by any number will always be 0. So that's one possibility that you will find. The other possibility, this one down here, is a straight line in the same way, but now it's vertical. You have a completely vertical line. So doing that analysis, we will see that the change on the horizontal is 0. And this presents a whole new case. If the slope is the change on the vertical divided by the change on the horizontal, and the change on the horizontal is 0, then it doesn't really matter what number we have in here. Let's take 2 points again. Right, let's take this point in here and this point in here. So we will have 3 and 3, 6. If the change on the vertical is 6, but the horizontal doesn't change, we will have a fraction in which the denominator is 0. And whenever we divide by 0, we know that this is undefined. So whenever you see a vertical line, you can automatically know that the slope will be undefined. Now, those are the two new cases. Okay, we have the horizontal line and the vertical lines. But let's see how we can calculate the slope, all right, for the other two cases. All right, the first thing you have to do is try to identify a point that crosses the grid, all right, precisely. What does that mean? If we start trying to identify points, well, this one is very obvious because it intersects the grid, all right, very precisely. But we don't have another point in here and here. So the next point that we have is all the way over here. it has a precise intersection. So we're going to use those two. Why those two? Because in our formula, we want to know the distance on the vertical, let's do this, the distance on the vertical change and the distance on the horizontal change. So here we go. This is the change on the vertical. And this is the change, just set up, there it is, on the horizontal. So by locating those intersections, those points, we just have to count the squares or spaces that we have on the vertical and horizontal. And we will have our slope. In this case, just watch out. Remember that as we're going downwards, in this case, we know that this change will be negative. So we have that we're moving 4 spaces, okay, or 4 units downwards, and we're moving 3 units to the right. And that's it. We have to do the same for this one right here. So let's identify those points first, as we said. And here's one of them. And here's the other one. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to measure the horizontal distance between those 2 points. That horizontal distance will be our change in X. And we're going to do the same for the vertical distance, which will be our change in Y. We know, let me move this, that our slope is the change in Y or the change in X. So in Y we have 1, 2, 3. And on the horizontal we have 4, 5, 8. And that's our slope. And that's how you calculate the slope graphically. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in our next video.